Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk about tips on how to actually pick a university. Just before we get started, Igloo is actually now in stock. I'd be super grateful if you could either purchase a mug or at least just go and check out the website for us. Just give us some feedback and your thoughts on the design. And obviously we're human, so there might be some spelling mistakes there. So anything like that, super grateful if you just go and check it out. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into it. So there's a couple of ways of looking at league table. Obviously you can look at things like a UK league table or a worldwide league table. So obviously things like Oxford and Cambridge are known worldwide, and I think they're in the top 10 or at least the top 20 universities in the world. But the other way of looking at this is that there's obviously a lot of universities that are specialised in certain areas. So for instance, when I went to university to do my masters, Reading in the UK is one of the most sort of famous construction universities. So that massively influenced why I wanted to go to Reading University. But going back to the first point on the sort of top ranked universities and even the Reading aspect is that there's one really important thing to get across here. Now, for the life of me, I can't remember where I heard this or where I read this. And if I do find it, I'll whack it in the comment section so you can read the link to it. But one of the things to remember is that with top universities, let's use the Oxford and Cambridge example I mentioned earlier, is that obviously everybody that's going to those universities is going to be a straight A student or very close to. So they're used to being the top in their school. But obviously something's got to give when you go to those universities. So if there's 100, 300 students going there, all with straight A's, obviously there's a high chance that someone who used to be the top dog in their school when it came to academics is now going to be the lowest when they go to that university. So what I remember learning is that there was a lot of people that went to those universities that never actually fulfilled the careers that they went to university for. So they were so off put by not being smart anymore or feeling stupid for the first time is they didn't actually pursue that career. Now I think the really important thing to remember here is that basically what I'm trying to get across is that if you're a B student, then don't think you need to go to a top university. It might be that you want to better align yourself and actually you should be looking at B universities or C universities, because at the end of the day you're probably going to be surrounded by more people with a similar intellect to yourself, and ultimately that's how you're going to get on with more people. Obviously you don't want to be getting overwhelmed by the first day of university because there's such a high rate of dropouts when you go to university, and that is probably one of the reasons behind it, is that ultimately you go there and feel completely overwhelmed by maybe the intellect of everyone else around you or the course content. So this is something that's a really good tip to look out for when you're actually picking universities. Number 2, part-time jobs. Now obviously a lot of you will be looking for part-time jobs while you're at university. Now what you need to consider here is that so many universities are like their own campuses or their own towns. So obviously there's not as many jobs going in these places. And even if you think about it from a work experience perspective, if you're at university and trying to get work experience in a local area, but obviously you're now on campus and it's miles away from anywhere near to work, it's obviously going to be difficult for you to get that work experience, just the same as it's going to be difficult for you to get a part-time job. So just bear that in mind when you're looking at universities. How big is the town or the city that they're in, because ultimately that will massively help you when it comes to getting jobs. Where do you want to work in the future? So obviously so many businesses and universities have tie-ins together. So obviously if you're going to university in London, they've got a lot of ties with London businesses. So therefore if you're thinking about, say, going to university in Scotland or you're going to Newcastle, but you actually eventually want to work in London, this is something to bear in mind, is that people in those universities may have a bit of a head start on you because of that tie-in. The other thing which is very linked to this is that often employers who went to certain universities have a preference for interviewing people in those universities. So I can remember years ago going into an interview, and one of the first things that came out in just conversation on the way into the interview or when we were sat down is, oh, I went to Reading University, I absolutely loved it there, do you remember this lecturer, etc. And it's just a breaking point, but it just shows you that I wholeheartedly believe the reason why I got that interview was because I went to Reading University and probably nothing else on my CV. So it's a really important factor to actually think beyond university and where you actually want to work. Check out course content. Obviously so many different courses have exactly the same title, but actually when you dive into their content, it's actually very, very different from one another. So that can be a huge decider in which university you actually want to go to, because you look at the modules and think, oh, that doesn't interest me, and then you read another module and think, oh, that's really interesting. The other side to this is that a lot of jobs have different routes to actually get into that job. So I mentioned in previous videos that I did building surveying undergraduate degree, and then I went on to be a QS straight out of university, and that's because the building surveying module had quantity surveying modules within it. Therefore, I was sat in the same classroom learning the same content as quantity surveyors. But added to this, obviously with project management, there's so many different routes to go into that. So you could be doing civil engineering, construction management, there are project management degrees, building surveying, quantity surveying. So there's so many different undergraduate degrees that you can do, which may lead to that job. So going back to the point of course content, obviously if I'd have picked something like civil engineering, I'm pretty confident that I wouldn't have enjoyed it, just because that's not really me and not what I'm into. Love chatting to those guys at work, obviously you can learn so much, but if it was solely focused on that element of it, I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't have been interested and probably wouldn't have been able to stick the course through. So it's so important to look at the course content and maybe look at the future job as to what are the routes into that different job. Like, can you do a different degree that actually is more engaging and you find more interesting? Renting and living costs. This one's quite self-explanatory, but obviously not all areas are made equal. So using London, for example, it's very, very expensive to rent in, as are other major cities around the world. But on top of this, obviously things like nightlife, eating out, any social activities are obviously way more expensive in London than they are elsewhere. So just make sure you factor this in, because I don't think there's much bigger stresses in life than worrying about money, and it will have huge implications on your work or your capability to do well at university, because you'll just be too stressed to actually enjoy the university life. And ultimately that's one of the major reasons why you're going, is just to have that new experience in life, as well as learning and obviously moving towards finding your career, or starting your career I should say. So just bear this in mind, because I think it's super important. I think it gets overlooked by so many people. Sports and social societies. So just like the point I made earlier, is that a lot of universities are known for certain types of sports or certain types of social societies. And if that's a big part of who you are, i.e. it might be that you're massively into football or rugby or hockey, whatever it is, obviously you need to factor in that some universities may not cater for those sports as well as other universities, or it's just not a big part of what their university is actually about. So make sure you consider that, because that's obviously one of the biggest ways of meeting people, making friends. Obviously in the second year, you'll be finding houses together. So I think that's a really important factor to look into, that obviously the social side of university is equally as important, or not far off of being as important as what the academic side is. So just make sure you look into this. So obviously I've mentioned previously that I went to Kingston University for my undergrad, and then I went to Reading for my master's. But actually I wanted to go to Reading for my undergraduate as well. But what happened is I didn't realise that Reading didn't accept PE or physical education as a subject. So I wasn't able to use my UCAS points towards getting into that university. So ultimately I applied and I got rejected. I think this is a really important thing to understand. It may be too late for you to obviously look at this, depending on where you are in your A-levels or whatever it is around the world that you're doing at the minute. But what I do think is important to understand is to actually pick out your second and potentially third best universities, because obviously there's a high chance that you won't get into your preferred university. So that was something that I probably didn't do enough of when I was looking. I kind of had my heart set on Reading, and then when that didn't happen, it was like a bit of a scramble to actually look at, again, the other universities I'd applied to. I actually don't think I applied to Kingston University. I think I went through clearing for Kingston University, because I kind of just ticked the boxes for the other universities that I got offers from. I didn't actually go to look at Kingston University. So when that happened, obviously I was kicked into overdrive to actually go and have a look at the different universities, and that's why I decided to pick Kingston. So there you have it. These are the things that I think are really important to consider when you're deciding which university to go to. Ultimately, I could have missed something, so please whack it in the comment section if you think I've missed anything off the list, or if you've got any questions. As always, I'll come back to you as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching. If you can, smash the thumbs up button. It massively helps out with the YouTube algorithm, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.